let me tell you, management is definitely a wild world. It's getting wilder, woollier, all sorts of, all of the different expletives and all the adjectives you can come up with. So when CareStack came to me and said, hey, let's put together this management series, I already had in mind a whole bunch of people that I know you're going to really enjoy learning from. First up is Lynn Leggett. Lynn has been a presenter for CareStack in the past, and so you can find her previous webinars on the website. But today she's going to talk about new managers and how they can make that transition. So let me just tell you about her real quick. Lynn is the founder and CEO of Victory Dental Management, and she's a practice management speaker, coach, and consultant, and an author, 25 years of business experience. So she's been around. As a speaker, she teaches doctors and their teams on how to take their practice to the next level and improve their leadership capability. She's also a seasoned basketball coach, and she understands what it means to have a true team working together, not just employees working at your practice. If any of you are sports fans, believe me, this is the coach for you. She's a member of the Academy of Dental Management Consultants, National Speakers Association, Speaking Consulting Network, and is part of the ADOM Speaker Consultant Alliance, as well as being a lifetime member and a fellow of ADOM, which is just all office manager information all the time. She's the author of a book, You Can't Coach, Quit, which really is a hit the ground running book that can help anybody who's looking to step into the leadership role. She also has online CE courses and multiple webinars. She's a contributing author to several dental magazines and multiple state association newsletter. And she has her monthly newsletter called The Coach's Corner that she sends out. So you want to sign up for that. And she's also got some videos on YouTube that I enjoy. She's worked with many new managers and dentists to take their skills to the next level. I always learn from her, and I know that you will too. So Lynn, take it away.
Oh, thank you so much, Teresa, and welcome everybody. And let me just start right in with this. I've sat in your chair, and I totally understand the obstacles that you're facing because of my experience. That's why I wanted to create this webinar for you. Whether you've been a manager for a year, or maybe some of you have been for over 20, there's always something new to learn. In fact, you may even feel like once you get comfortable, something else is changing around you. And this was true before COVID hit. And even since then, the changes keep coming at you. And that's why I'm here. I want to be able for you to take an hour for yourself and learn some tricks or different ways of thinking that can help you with your daily responsibilities. And I know it's tough to manage a practice, and you maybe feel overwhelmed, just like this picture, for many reasons. But let's face it, your doctor or doctors are going to hold you accountable for how the practice operates on a daily basis and its financial success. So I want to break down some of the overwhelm by breaking down things into pieces so you can easily manage those. And I think it's easier to break those down really into two main areas: managing people and managing tasks. Both are important, but I think we'd all agree that the people part, that has to come first. So let me help you with a different outlook on managing this. See, I teach leadership through the coaching model, and I'll talk about basketball all day long with you. But in this case, I want to tell you, I've worked with a lot of managers, and this is where you may need some extra help. So I'm here for you. But I'll tell you, I think you already know, you need to be organized. And you need to find a structure that works for you. And when I teach others how to be the coach, that gives you a visual reference of what I'm talking about. Either you played sports or maybe your kids do. And if you're a musical person, think of the coach as your director. For this, the most important thing for me is to make sure you have a visual reference of what I'm talking about. So let's go ahead and dive in. I find that most people in the dental industry always refer to the people they work with as a team. Well, the leader of that team is called a coach, right? So I'm going to discuss some details so everyone understands what I'm talking about. And you may be wondering how I can speak with authority about coaching. Well, I've coached basketball for almost 2 decades, and I've taught others how to coach for almost the same amount of time. I love to teach people how to coach, because this type of leadership, it really takes advantage of 2 things that already come naturally to you. One of them is encouragement, and the next one is education. But I'm going to start off really basic here to make sure we're all on the same page. Employees are not the same thing as a team, because a team, simply put, is a group that comes together to achieve a common goal. And employees, they're not the same thing at all. They're just a group of people that work for an organization. So you see, there's really nothing special about that definition. But to make sure we're all looking at this from the same perspective, I want to start with a generic definition of team that I found in the Business Dictionary. And they define a team as a group of people with a full set of complementary skills required to complete a task, a job, or a project. Team members are going to operate with a high degree of interdependence, share authority and responsibility for self-management, and they're accountable for the collective performance and work toward a common goal and shared rewards. Again, it's extremely broad definition. So let's change this to the scope of a dental practice team. So a practice team is a group of people working together cohesively towards the goal of the doctor or owner. And there is a very high level of patient satisfaction, while knowing that all members of the team are accountable to each other, using their individual strengths to enhance the performance of the team. I don't know about you, but I think that that's still pretty wordy. So let's just look at the bold words for a moment. A team works together cohesively for the goals of the doctor owner to have a very high level of patient satisfaction, being accountable to each other, using their individual strengths for the performance of the team. Now that's getting better, but those are words. I want to know how. What do you do for that? What does that actually look like in your practice? And why is being a team that important to the doctor and the team members? Because a team should be able to anticipate the next move of their teammate. And they should trust that their teammates will take care of things correctly the first time. And if you're laughing about that, I totally understand. And the third is everybody is on the same page. So let's really look at that in our practice and see what that looks like. And I want to use an example here for the team to be able to anticipate the next move of their teammate. I want you to think about the process of treatment plans. We know that the clinical information is going to be handled by the doctor and the clinical team. It's going to be written down and given to the admin team so that they can break down the insurance and the out-of-pocket costs for the patient and present that to the patient. So in this example, the team can anticipate the next move of their teammate. Trust that your teammate does things correctly the first time. Now, I know I chuckled, but you guys get it. I mean, sometimes people do things well and sometimes not so well. But I think in this example, trust actually to me means confidence. Are you confident that your team member will take care of things correctly the first time? Because the team, if you actually have a true team, you're going to start holding each other accountable for these things. And everyone is on the same page. Does everybody understand their role and responsibility? What is expected not only of them as individuals, but also as the whole team? And let me interject here for a minute. I'm going to switch back and forth because I say this all the time. R&R is the same thing as role and responsibility. So if you hear me say that, that's what I'm talking about. See, the qualities of a team, they're actually built by the coach. And in this instance, the coach can be the doctor or the owner, or in a lot of cases, it's you, the manager. So the goal is to get everybody on the same page. And in order to do that, it's best to get their input on the following items. The first is the mission, then your vision and core values, because that enables everyone to be able to share the same beliefs on how the team should function, especially within the practice. For the goal, for your patients to be able to be taken care of as you deem appropriate. So let's break this down into some detail. Does everybody believe in what you're trying to do? I mean, that's your mission, right? And it's hard to get people on the same page if they don't know what that page actually is. And I know you've probably heard this before, but the mission is vitally important because it really is foundational to getting your team on the same page. And I believe your practice mission is the opportunity for you to define your practice ethics and your norms for decision making, which is also known as the philosophy of your practice. Does everyone on your team understand the why of the practice? I know that's very popular, but here's some other ways to define that same thing. Another way of looking at it is, who are you? And what specifically does your practice do? What unique benefits do you provide your patients? Maybe what makes you unique are your convenient hours, or maybe your glowing reviews, or how you build relationships. Whatever it is, whether on or off the basketball court, I'm telling you, when your team believes in the mission, it is absolutely amazing what can be accomplished. And I realize it's very basic, but see, everybody needs to understand so that everybody is on board with the mission of the practice. It brings everybody together for that common purpose. And I want to share with you an example so you can understand why the mission is so critical of how it will affect your practice and for everybody to be on the same page. So we know your entire team needs to be consistent and saying the same thing, because that's really going to create trust or strengthen that trust between your practice and the patient when the messaging is the same. So let's say that Mrs. Smith is afraid of coming to the dentist, and that's actually a part of your mission statement. Everybody in this example knows key phrases to be able to alleviate stress and share how successful and comfortable other patients like Mrs. Smith are when they're taken care of at your office. Now, conversely, compare that to most team members don't know how well you work with patients that have anxiety. And those team members, by not doing so, you decrease the treatment plan acceptance and Mrs. Smith continuing to come to your practice. So your team can unknowingly do this since they're not aware of the mission of the practice. No one's told them, or there hasn't been enough clarity so they can connect how the mission would translate to the talking points with different types of patients. So you can see the importance of the entire team understanding the mission of your practice. And I know a lot of you have had some turnover last year. If this has happened in your office, please review your mission statement. And if you haven't already, it's never too late to take the time and create that with your team. Does everybody believe in the same core values? Because that's going to bind people together on a much deeper level. Now, my definition of core values really is the character while attaining your goals, also known as your moral compass. It guides your attitudes and your actions and your decision making. Now, we know that there's a code of ethics from a professional standpoint, but core values, they're personal. Examples like following the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated. Words like integrity and honesty, those are also used a lot. But you can see the key is that it needs to be actionable, not just words. And hopefully your practice is focusing on hiring the right individuals, not just the job skills that they're able to perform, because the team is a reflection on everyone. And personal experience, I've actually seen a team member be a living example of strong core values rubbing off on other team members. It happens all the time. So, future building when it comes to the vision. Now, I create mine very differently than a lot of other people. So I'm going to try to go through this rather slowly for you. I I create mine so differently that it actually becomes part of your strategic plan for the practice. I break everything down into the practice and how you would like things to be done. So to give you an idea of how I do it, let me ask you these questions so you can start thinking. I want you to describe your dream practice. And by that, I mean the following. What experience do you want for your patients when they come to your practice? And I want you to be able to describe that from the beginning with the phone call to the end when they pay their bill. Describe the characteristics that you want for your team. How do you want them to interact with one another, with the dentist, and with your patients? And physically speaking, what does your dream office look like? What technology is used? And when you're thinking about this, think about it as if money is no object. What would you like to have? And I realize that slide, there's a lot to wrap your mind around. That's why my vision statements are so unique. And another aspect of your vision is actually the culture in your practice. Now, there is a culture for your practice, excuse me, and there is a culture that you are going to develop for your team. And I try to make things that are complicated as simple as possible because I just find that that helps a lot of people. So I define culture as what is acceptable or not acceptable in your practice. It's been my experience that when you think of culture that way, it clears up anything that's vague. Next is going to be, what do you want to accomplish? Now, measuring all of these goals, obviously it's going to be important to your success. But I have a different way of looking at goals and how that's related to your practice. Because you see, goals are important, and the systems that you use, those are going to be crucial to your success. So say it this way. Goals are about the results that you want, and systems are about the processes that lead to those results. So goals are good at setting you in a particular direction, but systems are best for making progress. For example, as a basketball coach, do you think I want my team to win the championship as much as other coaches? After meeting me for 30 seconds, you're going to know I'm extremely competitive. So you know the answer to this question is yes, exactly. No question. So if the winners and if the winner and losers have the same goal to win the championship, what's the difference? Because the goal is the same for each team, right? Well, the difference is going to be seen when the team implemented continuous small improvements, which allowed them to achieve a different outcome. So when you maximize your systems, then the outputs are going to fix themselves. So that's why I say if you fall in love with the process rather than the product, you really don't have to wait to be happy with that. You're looking to be satisfied anytime that system is running. Because see, the key is the system that you're going to use. Again, I think systems are more important than the goal. Using that correct process, that's going to determine your progress, or another way of looking at it, your daily commitment to the process. So I know treatment planning is easy for us to talk about. So let me use that as an example. Let's see how that system is going to make a huge impact on your patients and on your practice. So we know the doctor diagnoses the issue that needs attention, and the clinical team's going to write up the treatment plan, giving all the options. The admin team's going to take the treatment plan, figure out the insurance and patient responsibility, and present that to the patient. Okay, that's the easy part. We all can do that in our heads. But what system do you follow if the patient does nothing on that day? The treatment's still needed. Items have been diagnosed. So what system are you following consistently about those treatment plans that are not acted on the day that they're presented to the patient? You guys are smart. You see where I'm going with this. It's all about accountability. So whose R&R, whose role and responsibility is it going to be to follow up on that? And not only that, but what method are you going to use to follow up And how are you going to measure that process? That's why I say, if you follow a great process, that's more important than the goal that you want to achieve. If you follow that process, I promise you, your goals are going to be reached on a more regular basis, especially with your team focused on the daily processes and daily commitment to that process. That's going to be key. So, does your entire team understand everyone's R&R, their role and responsibility? Because each team member needs to understand who's responsible for what, or there's going to be no accountability within the team. It goes back to having a clear plan for each team member, clear expectations, responsibilities, job descriptions, and goals. And that includes your associates as well. So there needs to be a clear process and systems for each team member to use. Almost view it as a step-by-step instructions on how things are to be done in your office. Now, I find most practices, they know that stuff in their head, but that information in your head needs to get down on paper. That's the crucial step that a lot of practices are missing. So if a team member is confused about something, then you know there needs to be more clarity. You don't want anything to slip through the cracks, because we know that confusion can lead to trust issues. Again, I'm going to be real here. What you see is what you get. So remember, those roles in your practice, they're highly and tightly related to one another. I like to refer to those like dominoes. If one's going to fall, then they're all going to fall. And if that happens, then the patient experience that you desire for your patients, it's not going to occur the way you want it to. If there's not enough clarity, then it can lead to confusion and frustration for your team. And if that happens, it may lead to your best team members leaving your practice. So when I say writing down the job descriptions and having that clarity is important, that is one of the main reasons why top performers will leave a practice. And I don't know about you guys, but I personally believe that dentistry is all about relationships. So building that rapport and trust with your patients, that's the first part. But you've got to build that well within your team. It's just as important for the success of your practice. And only after you've done everything I've already mentioned thus far, can you really start to hire the right team members for your practice. So let's talk about onboarding, because I know that's a really big topic. You need a plan. You need to teach everyone how you want things to be done, and that they understand your mission, your vision, and your core values. You need to make sure that they agree to the culture that you are building or that you have built. And any additions to the team, they need to agree with the practice philosophy. See, your team members, they need to understand how you want things to be done. Even before, when they start working with you day one, before they answer that first phone call, they need to understand all of these things, because it's that important to you and your culture. All items need to be taught, not just assumed, because other practices do things differently. And this is one way that you can make sure everybody understands your culture. Because if you don't take the time to do this part, then your team will be weak. And we don't want a weak team. As a coach, you get the opportunity to put them in a position to succeed. And you guys know I'm all about that. Also, as the coach, you need to have respect of your team. And a key ingredient to that is communication. And the words we choose can make or break the team that we're building. That's why I'm known for saying this slide that's on there. I'm known for saying you teach people and you train dogs. And I've never agreed with the phrase of training people. Personally, I think it's a respect thing. It's really a pet peeve of mine, but that's my perspective. But you know, that's a really cute puppy. I really like the puppy's eyes. Feedback. Oh my gosh, I love giving feedback. As a coach, you should always be giving feedback. Just like a basketball coach. If somebody does something well, you let them know. If something wasn't done up to your standards, you let them know. As the coach, though, your team should always know where they stand with you. There shouldn't be any surprises since the communication should be flowing all the time between everybody. And appreciation, that can be shown in a lot of different ways. And thank you is always the best because it's immediate and it helps create a solid team culture. Now, be aware, some personality types need to hear your feedback more frequently than others. So make sure you let your team know how well they're doing. And if they're not doing well, that's okay. Let them know areas that they need to improve. Again, it's always that constant feedback. And one last thing about managing people before we get into task. I want to leave you with a tip. That's good. Keep a master file of the paperwork that you need of items, because I know of you have had a lot of turnover in your offices, and keeping that master file is going to be crucial since you don't want to reinvent the wheel every time there's a change, but just keep that master file updated. And then that way you can make copies as you need as you hire someone. That way you don't feel the stress of having to make sure all that paperwork's put together. So now we're on to task. Remember, we divided it between people and task. Now, when it comes to task, I realize managing your practice has a different definition depending on how your doctor wants things to work. So sometimes this can range between you actually doing the work or you're going to be responsible for the results. And I like to think of the practice manager as part project manager as well. So let me define that for you. So I'm not sure if you've heard that phrase before. Loosely put, a project manager is a master organizer because you need to make sure all of your deadlines are being kept so you achieve the results that you're looking for. For example, you're not only running the office, but you're also looking into CE classes, right? Or maybe purchasing a new piece of equipment, contracts, lease agreements. It really could be anything. So organizing all of this requires project management to keep it all together. Staying organized and knowing where you are at all times with your timelines and your deadlines. Because see, you need to remain organized because requests are always going to be thrown at you and being asked of you to do different things. Now, I know in the practices that I used to manage, one particular practice, my doctor would get thoughts all day long. And he loved sticky notes and he would post them in my office all the time. And if he had an idea at home, he'd write a sticky note and then he'd put it all up on my office wall. You cannot imagine how many sticky notes I would walk in on each Monday if he stopped by the office during the weekend. I'm just saying that's one reason why I don't like sticky notes as much as I used to, because it just gives me stress as soon as I see a sticky note. And I'm not even going to talk during this webinar about handwriting and deciphering that. I think we all have to deal with that as well.
I'm in the same boat with you.
Sticky notes, they're either your friend or foe. I don't think anybody is in between with that.
Well
but
put.
you know, knowing how to keep yourself organized is going to keep your sanity. So maybe some of you like doing things via paper or via digital. It really depends on your personal preference. There's no right or wrong answer with that. Because when I managed practices, I actually physically had a calendar and I had a monthly, weekly, and daily tabs. I would fill those in for the month and then I worked it back into the week and into the daily. Now, regular items like payroll, QuickBooks, those reports, there's certain days that I wanted to do that on my calendar. So I blocked my time to be able to do that. And I think it actually works best because you have so many different things you're responsible for as managers to be able to block your schedule as well so that you make sure the most important things get done. So let's be real. Think about it. Something is always going to be thrown at you to handle. That's just life. But the key is you never know when it's going to be thrown at you. So you need to be organized to help with that. Now, I'll mention some examples that may help you. If you prefer paper and you like looking at a calendar system, I like Franklin Planner, but I want to warn you about that. Franklin is not the cheapest alternative out there, but if it's something that you really want to look for, they have anything you want. So I looked at their website, and it's actually shop.franklinplanner.com. And if you want that, something in particular, they're going to have it. And we know that there are cheaper alternatives out there at a store like Staples or Office Max, and of course, Amazon. But I'll tell you a brand that I really like if I'm going paper, and it's called Blue Sky. They have some great options for you. And they're spiral bound planners. The spiral part really will last an entire year. So don't worry about that. They're made really well. And I'll be really honest with you all. Once I create a system that works for me, I tend to be very specific, and some might even say a little OCD about it, but that's okay because it's the system that works for me. The key is that all of you need to find a system that works for you. Now, if you like digital, like I do now, there are so many different choices for you to use. Chances are also that you're a visual person and you want to see your information in different ways. You can always use the calendar on your cell phone, but please, if you do that, make sure that you're being HIPAA compliant in all situations. And I wanted to give you a list of apps here so you can look into these. There's Google Task, Grid Booth, Trello, Microsoft To Do, and Wunderlist. And I use a lot of these, but my favorite, the one that I absolutely love, is Evernote. And I'll tell you why. You can actually use tags to keep your information together by subject. So you can easily find the information that you're looking for. You can take notes in a meeting using Evernote. You can write down ideas that you have at home, and you can keep everything organized in one app. So looking into these apps, just to give you a heads up, a lot of them have free options. They're not all paid plans. And in your management position, part of that is also following up to make sure the tasks that you have are done and complete. And I found a lot of managers do that differently. But the basis is this: you don't want to be surprised if you missed anything. And I apologize if anybody's named Susie. I tend to use Susie as an example when things don't go very well. But as the manager, you need to know if Susie actually followed up on all of those outstanding claims, or did she just rescind the claims that haven't been paid yet? You guys know what I'm talking about. It happens. So you need to hold her responsible for the actions of others to make sure that those items are done. But how do you do that? It goes back to how you're being organized. So make sure whatever you're using, whether it be handwritten or digital, that you also insert the day and time that you're going to follow up with those different items, because that's something that's missed a lot because we all get so busy. So put a reoccurring reminder in whatever system you're using so you don't forget to follow up and make sure things are getting done. Because I think it's best really to check on their progress before the deadline hits. That way that you're not surprised. So let me mention some tasks that you should already be doing or managing. And it's not an exhaustive list, but I wanted to give you some different things to think about. You may do these items weekly or twice a month. As you know, these are very important and they cannot be ignored. For me, it was easier to do these on a weekly basis so it wouldn't pile up too much. Now, for outstanding claims, I would do those weekly because time is not your friend and you need these to get paid as soon as possible. And if there's a problem, you need to be able to know what it is and fix it so that you can get the money in that the practice is owed. Now, I look at insurance as a method of payment. So by staying on top of this, you separate yourself from other practices, and I think it's a competitive advantage for you. And be sure to let your patients know that you routinely help them to get the most out of their benefits. Because I promise you, if you don't tell them, they don't know. They don't know what life is like in a dental practice and how you're helping them all along through the process. We know it's time consuming, and I think it's okay for you to say that it's an advantage for you. When it comes to fees, I want you to look at these at least yearly. And I know some practices look at them at least every 6 months. If you notice something is costing you more money, adjust your fees as necessary. because I know for me, I had to look at crown fees when our lab fee was really going out of control. Because you're paying the bills, you need to make sure your cost and your profit margins are where you need them to be. And be sure to update your treatment plans accordingly. That's why I always put an expiration date on my treatment plans when I get them signed by the patient, because by doing so, you protect yourself from the increased cost. And also the patients may be a little bit more financially motivated to act on those as well. Now, network participation, always a hot topic. These decisions really are business decisions for your practice. And I believe that profit is not a bad word. So some insurance companies, believe it or not, are actually decreasing your reimbursement amounts. So please be alert when you're looking at your EOBs. And if you need to make a change and stop being an in-network provider, please communicate this clearly with your patients. And this is an opportunity, if you have to do that, to shine with your communication skills and set your practice up for success. Because if you do so correctly, you would be amazed at how many patients remain active patients, even if you don't participate in their insurance or their insurance plan anymore. When it comes to clinical notes, some insurance companies are now requesting clinical notes to be attached to certain claims for payment instead of narratives. And since this trend will probably increase in the future, please let your doctors know about this. And you'll need to spot audit some clinical notes to make sure the correct information is being captured. So let me tell you what a good clinical note would be. It needs to be detailed enough so you understand what diagnosis was made, what were the clinical findings of that diagnosis, and what took place to put the patient back into good oral health. Now, I'm going to put a plug in here for our moderator today and my good friend, Teresa Duncan. She stays on top of this ever-changing environment of insurance. So make sure you follow her on social media and sign up for her newsletter, because it is chock full of information.
Hey, Lynn, if I can just interrupt for 1 second, I want to encourage people to use the Q&A feature too as well. We're going to have time here in a little bit for questions from Lynn and Teresa. So please, that's the best way for us to hear from you. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll be speeding things up a little bit for you.
Take it. You're
Okay.
doing a good. Keep
With membership plans, I actually love them because it offers different opportunities and options for your patients, really. But if you like one, you need to decide if you want to offer it in-house or use an outside company. Because as with any business decision, there are pros and cons to each option. So do your research and choose the best option for you. Now, when it comes to patient aging, most practices send statements out to patients after insurance is paid. If that's the case for your practice, it's even more important that your insurance claims get paid as fast as possible. Like I said before, keep an eye out on that outstanding insurance payment report so you can then send out your patient statements. And depending on how many patient statements you need to send out, I suggest sending them out weekly, because you can set this up in your computer software, no matter what software you use, and you can send them out based off of alphabetical order. But the key is sending it out weekly. You establish a cash flow that doesn't have a lot of peaks and valleys, which is really what you're looking for. You're looking for that straight line so that you don't have problems with deposits and withdrawals within your deposit or within your checking account there for the practice. And I also recommend sending a statement if a patient owes anything right after you post that insurance check. There's no magical reason to wait to send a statement on a certain date. So send those statements as soon as you post the check if the patient owes anything. Always be thinking about how you can influence that cash flow in your practice. When it comes to collections, please make sure your team understands your collection procedures and how you want to handle those situations. Double check your financial policy for the particular content that you need, and make sure your patients sign and date this form. And credits can be interesting. I know a lot of practices allow credits to stay in their system without any notes about what that is to be used for. Please check your state law to make sure you know the time limit that you have for that. Because if a patient's paying also for future payment, make sure those notes are in the software so you know how the team needs to apply those funds. That's a big thing that can trip a lot of practices up, is the credits. So your schedule. Every doctor likes their schedule to be created in a certain manner. So look ahead to make sure your clinical team is being set up for success. Remember, you're the coach. Look ahead, anticipate these issues. And by always looking ahead, you're proactively making sure that everything runs as smooth as possible. And we know changes are going to occur. That's life. But it always makes sense to double check that schedule, because this is going to affect the doctor and will affect, if anything will affect their attitude, that schedule will affect their attitude. And something else that will affect your doctor is if they get hangry in the afternoon. Now, I'm serious when I say this. Totally serious.
I get hangry too.
Oh, well, I do too. But I mean, Jim, I would keep some of my doctor's favorite goodies in my office just in case I needed to surprise him with it. And I'd also add a little bit of junk food too, depending on his mood, because he appreciated the thought.
Good
And
strategy.
total strategy. And I'll tell you, the team appreciated it too, because I would slip in some snacks when he needed it. It was a win-win for everybody. And just a reminder, Halloween is right around the corner. Fun size works really, really well. Just saying. And case acceptance. As the coach, I believe that case acceptance is the responsibility of every team member, because it's directly related to the overall satisfaction with the practice. So for example, if you can have the best doctor in the world for a procedure, but if a patient is treated rudely or anything that from a negative standpoint, that's the information that's going to be shared and spread in the community. And patients will find another provider based off of how they were treated, not the clinical expertise. And that's why I teach practices across the country to consistently deliver the best patient experience possible. Make sure all of your forms and policies are up to date and signed. There's financial policy, health history, HIPAA, consent to treatment, all kinds of things. Set yourself a yearly reminder to make sure nothing changes. Now, HR items. We could talk a lot about this, but I believe it's really important to have an office manual that everybody reads and signs. And the whole purpose of that is to make sure that there's no confusion on any policy or subject matter, as even as small as using your cell phone. Because the main idea of your office manual is to clear up proactively any subject that could arise. And personally, I prefer working with an HR company that stays on top of all of the changes in your state law. I mean, we know with COVID and a lot of different things, there are a lot of companies out there that can make sure that you stay on top of those things. When it comes to hiring and firing, there's a correct way to do that. Again, I advocate for HR professionals in this area. I want to also add to that, make sure that your employee files are kept under lock and key, because you don't want anybody to be able to pull up somebody else's personnel file. Make sure if you have any coaching sessions or recommendations and corrective actions, those are in your employee files as well. Don't put writing those off for a long time, because memories fade and you may not remember every single detail. So as the manager, as the coach, it needs your immediate attention, because I'm telling you, the entire team is going to be looking at you and how you handle those particular moments. As the coach, you need to keep your team accountable to you and your expectations. Compliance. This is a big one. Make sure that you're abiding by the rules. It's there for everybody's safety. Not only HIPAA and OSHA, but there's also something called the breach notification rule, which has something to do with the safety of data, either in paper or digital form. There's also PCI compliance that has to do with the use of credit cards and payments in your office. Really, the easiest way to look at all of this, it's all about respecting and securing data and treating it with respect. I'm not an expert in this particular field. So if anybody has any questions about this, I can certainly get you in touch with experts that's all they deal with. Customer service or complaints. Now, it's been my experience that these special moments happen when you have the most to do on your list. We've all been there. And we know it's important to deal with those at the time. So leave some open time in your schedule. And I'll share with you of my experience. I had one particular team member who was more adept at handling these issues than another. It was a great opportunity for me as the coach to be able to bring my weaker team member up to match the other one just with some one-on-one coaching, because that way they handle the situations appropriately. And then it allowed me to handle some of the bigger situations in the practice. So don't forget that coaching opportunity as well. Now, there's also something known as everything else. At the end of the month, I would look back at my calendars and reflect on what happened and what I would like to improve. There's always something to improve. So write down those reminders for yourself, especially if something happens seasonally and you want to try something different year over year. This is going to help you with your planning. Before we open it up for questions, I want you to know where you can find some free resources from me. So if you go to my website, victorydentalmanagement.com, and go to the media tab, there you'll find a resource titled Items to Ponder regarding your practice. It's free. Feel free to go there and download those resources. Now, I know that I gave you a bunch of information. If you have any questions or you need any assistance, please do not hesitate to reach out to me.
And thank you so much. We have our first question here. And it's related to the person asks about statements and wants your perspective. In working with all these offices, why do you think dental practices are reluctant to send out that statement initially? What's the issue, or what's the obstacle for them?
For sending out a statement?
Yes.
Well, I would think that the first thing is that somebody may not want to be able to ask patients for money. So I'm going to back that up a little bit, going, if you don't like sending out a statement to a patient, then are you having trouble with patients paying you at the time of service? Because if insurance is involved, you're going to need to accept your copay at the time of service. So that's something that if somebody is hesitant or reluctant to send a statement, there are other red flags in my mind, Jim, that are going off that are going to be connected to that.
Yeah, thank you for speaking to that. Teresa, I didn't mean to step on your sense there. I think you're about to mention something.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Lynn, I was cracking up about the part with the Post-it notes, because I also have a love-hate relationship with them, and they stay there for a long time, and it's faded. When your Post-it note is faded and you still haven't done it, then there's a problem, right? So what I really like about the tech tools that you referenced is that if you have other people using it in your office, not just yourself, you can tag people and get them, to have accountability with that. So I think that's a really great way of doing it. But yeah, transitioning away from the Post-it notes is very interesting. So I had a thought though, because I want to emphasize this, and I know that you address this often in your training, is the reflection of the leader. The team is the reflection of the leader, whether they realize it or not, the team's attitude. And I think a lot of times we have doctors who know that their team members could be a little kinder to patients or could be kinder to each other. And they think, oh, well, that's just her personality or his style or whatever it is. But could you maybe speak to how uncomfortable that can be for the team when you recognize this in a team member and you need to gently correct that? Because it's totally a reflection on the team.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference too when it comes to attitude. I think there's a difference between, let me back up just for a second, Teresa, that between attitude and mindset, they're two different things. Mindset is something that's intentional, because I think a lot of people use those words interchangeably. Attitude is something that can change with emotion or environment. So if somebody's having a bad day, that's one thing. But if somebody is consistently treating somebody not out of respect or using the great customer service skills that we all should have within our dental practices, then that truly, that's a negative. That's going to be a reflection to the doctor and the manager too, because that's a question of, if I'm seeing it, then you're complacent because it's still occurring and it hasn't been corrected yet. It's touchy because now we're dealing with trying to have some corrective action with how somebody is talked to. I find that those situations are best handled with a role play. And if they have, they may not even realize that they're doing it. I had a team member that didn't realize that when she was talking to somebody, she felt the stress of all the things that she had to do, that she didn't relax and smile and talk to the patient that was in front of her, because that was the priority for her at the time. It wasn't about the work that was piling up on the side. And it was really difficult for her to differentiate between the two. And that may be the situation that's happening in an example like that they're feeling, okay, Mrs. Smith, you got to get out of here because I have all these other things to do. The patient, that's your focus, especially if you are at the front office. You're a reflection on everybody. So if that's still an issue, having one-on-one coaching sessions and trying to bring the best out of them, and first asking, do you realize that this is what's happening? Because they may not realize it. And if they say that they don't, then that's a great opportunity to coach them to something different. If they do realize they're doing it and they don't care, then that goes back to your mission and vision and core values. If you're the weak link on that team, then either the weak link needs to get stronger or the weak link needs to be invited to seek employment elsewhere.
And it's tough too, because sometimes you have people who are in the middle, they're not necessarily the star players. They're not the worst players. But if you let that, like you said, if you let that weak link, take up a lot of oxygen in the office, you'll start to get more weak links. And then it all kind of goes downhill. So we've seen that over and over again, I think.
We have.
Offices.
And the other thing too, is if that's how they're acting, then they're an employee and they're not a true team member. And the rest of the team needs to be able to call them out on that.
Well, I just popped into the chat a message about getting your Grubhub gift card if you'd like one. So, Jeff, are you sending an email now to get your Grubhub gift card? You're smiling a lot, so I'm assuming you're getting your gift card.
Absolutely. I've already got it on order. I just got to figure out how to apply the gift card to the lunch I got on the way.
Hey,
but that's our thank you to everybody who is attending. But go ahead, Jim. I don't want to cut you off. It looked like you were going to say something.
To post to Lynn, and this comes from someone who's asking about associate doctor. So you've transitioned into your role, and there's an associate in a practice that may not have the same vision as the principal, how she wants to run her business. Any advice that you give to a newly promoted or office manager or leader in the office, how to deal with an associate who might not have the same vision as the rest of the business?
Sure. And that, unfortunately, that happens more than we would like to admit. So that is a real problem. I think that needs to be a meeting between the manager and the doctor first to make sure that, how was this associate hired? Were they told about these things? Because sometimes doctors just truly forget, hey, I've got this information. I should have shared it with the associate before bringing them on. Because if you've built the team that you want to build, you want to continue that culture that sometimes it takes a long time, guys, to build this culture. It's not overnight. It takes a lot of time when you're dealing with human behavior. And that's really what we're talking about, is the change of human behavior and trying to draw people closer. So all of these things is with the sense of being able to bring people closer by having that shared purpose. If the associate, they may not even know that this is something that's there. It actually makes the associate's life a lot easier, knowing that these items are there for them to be able to build upon. I really haven't met an associate that is so anti what the current team is doing and what the current doctor is doing, because they've been brought on. So I think a lot of it is just understanding that information is there and how do they relate to it? Because I know a lot of associates, I get calls from associates that say, I don't feel like I'm a part of the team because I'm so new and they don't know how to work with me. I'm not the doctor that signs their paycheck, but yet I want to be a part of the team. But I'm a clinical practitioner as well. How do I, it's a tightrope for them too. So I think as the manager, you need to be able to meet with them and have that discussion as well to make sure everybody's on the same page, because you've done all of this work to bring everybody together as the coach. You want to be able to have that next player be able to join you, or the assistant coach, or however you want to term the associate. They all need to be on the same page. And I think a lot of times it's just a lack of information.
Yeah, thank you for speaking to that. I'll shut up and then let Teresa have the closing words. Real quickly, inside the chat there, if you want a demo of CareStack and you want more bounty, we're offering a $50 Amazon gift card if you book a demo through this webinar, just by clicking on that link. And then the last piece of information I wanted to share is our next program will be on difficult patient conversations. Teresa is going to host that on in November, Teresa, right? November, is it 16th or 17th?
16th. I think
16th.
it's the 16th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we'll get that information to you. I'll turn it back to Teresa. Lynn, thank you so much for such a wonderful program today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you, Jim, for helping out with this. And Jeff, I love seeing your face there. Thank you for popping in, and thank you both for supporting. So honestly, you have Grubhub's gift certificate, you have a chance for an Amazon gift certificate, you have all this information that Lynn gave. And Lynn, if they reach out to you for a copy of the slides or a PDF, a handout or something, they can do that with your email that you have on the screen.
Absolutely. That'll be the easiest for them and the easiest for me.
Okay, great. Yes. And keep an eye out for an email with information about my webinar. Well, we'll talk about difficult patient conversations because, not all patients are easy. That's just how it goes. So we'll talk about that. And Lynn, thank you so much. You always bring so much knowledge to this space, and I so appreciate you being a part of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Teresa. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone. Thanks for attending. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank
Thanks,
you so much,
everybody.
everyone. Take care. Stay safe.
Bye.